Honor, the state would call Sergeant Daniel Greene.
You'll raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or
Affirm that the testimony you give to the court in this trial will be the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. You may have a seat. Adjust that microphone so that it fits you comfortably. And if you'll state your name and spell your last name for the record.
My full name is Daniel Greene. My last name Greene.
Sergeant Greene, how you doing today?
I'm good.
All right, tell us where you work.
I work for the Colleton County Sheriff's Office.
Okay, and your rank is sergeant, obviously, is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us just a little bit about yourself. Just give us just a little bit of your background that led you to your career in law enforcement, if you would, please.
Sure. I went to school here, grew up here, went to college at Charleston Southern University. I got a degree in social studies education, taught for a little while, and then got into law enforcement. Just kind of fell into it and liked it. And I've been here since 2014.
Okay. You started with the Sheriff's Department in 2014?
That's correct.
All right, and what was your first job that you did, or how does your career progress?
I started at the jail. I worked there for just over a year, and then I was moved to the road patrol. I was on road patrol for several years, moved up the ranks to sergeant, where I was a road patrol supervisor, and now I'm a detective.
Okay. When did you become detective?
Earlier last year. It would have been June of last year.
Back in June of 2021, what was your job at that particular time with the Sheriff's Department?
In June of 2021, I was a road patrol sergeant supervisor.
All right, and explain how that works. What's your exact role as a sergeant and a road patrol supervisor?
So for the most part, I'm assigned a team consisting of 3 to 4 deputies, just depends, that include a corporal as well as several other deputies. My job primarily is to supervise them in their in a 12-hour shift. We answer calls for service. Sometimes I'll go with other deputies to calls that require more than one officer to be present. But the majority of my job is supervising what they do.
And during June of 2021, were you working day shift or night shift, or how did that work?
I was on night shift at that point.
And what are the hours of the night shift?
So we swap every 2 months. So 2 months you'll be on days, 2 months you'll be on nights. For those hours, it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay. And let me take you to the evening of June 7th, 2021. Were you working that particular evening?
I was.
And what shift were you working that day?
We were on night shift,
And again, so what hours would that be?
working from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
So you went on duty at 6 p.m., is that
I did,
correct?
yep.
Okay. And you said you're the sergeant. What was do you have a squad that you're supervising that are out during that shift? Explain that to the jury, if you would, please.
So that shift consisted of myself being the sergeant. I had a corporal and 2 deputies working as well. And at that point, I had a lieutenant who was my immediate supervisor. He was working as well.
All right, and again, you tell me who those people were?
Sure. So my corporal was Corporal Janicki, and the 2 deputies working with me were Deputy William Pruitt and Deputy Chad McDowell.
All right. And the lieutenant was who?
Lieutenant Lonnie Nettles.
Did you, on the evening of June 7th, 2021, get a call for service at 4147 Moselle Road?
I did.
And you remember approximately what time that was?
Later in the evening, several hours into my shift.
Okay. And did you ultimately respond to that location?
I did.
What was reported to you that led to the call for service from the dispatch?
That there was a caller who stated he had found his wife and son shot.
And so tell me what happens then. You get that report, what do you do?
So I get that call for service. Obviously, we immediately respond. In situations like that, we would respond with lights and sirens to get there as quickly as possible.
You're driving fast to get there?
Yes.
The lights are on?
Lights were on, siren was on. I think it still took me close to 20 minutes to actually get to the scene from where I was. But
You have to ask dispatch to clarify the address?
I did once I got out there. It's a very dark area, very rural area on Moselle Road. There were not a whole lot of residences in the area, and I did need clarification once I got out there to confirm the address. Then I located the address on a mailbox across the street from a driveway.
So you saw the mailbox in the driveway you entered, is that correct?
That's correct.
The driveway that you entered that had this mailbox, where did it ultimately lead? What structures were there as you pulled up to the scene?
As I pulled down the long driveway, when I got to the end of it, there was a dog kennel area on the left as well as a shed area on the right.
And that was the driveway with the mailbox, correct?
That was.
Is this location where the scene was, is it in Colleton County?
It is.
Tell me just a little bit before we get into more specifics. What was the, you said it was dark. What was the weather like? What was the conditions of the scene or the weather in the scene like?
So quite normal for June around here. It's rather hot and humid. It had been raining a little bit off and on that evening. It was not raining at the time that I actually responded to the scene.
Okay. Were you the first law enforcement officer or first responder on the scene?
I was.
Were there others, other first responders following close behind?
The additional first responder that was directly behind me worked for Colleton County Fire Rescue. He pulled in almost the same time I did.
When you would arrive at the scene, before we talk about what you actually experienced at this scene, what is your main job at a scene like this? What are you there to do as a first responder, the first officer on the scene?
Yeah, so a major crime scene like that, my job is to get there, secure the scene, and what I mean by secure the scene is ensure that there are no individuals there that would potentially cause harm to additional first responders coming there or any witnesses or victims that are already on scene. Preserve any evidence that might be there, and then wait for investigators to arrive as I gather information from anybody else that is already on scene.
Okay, so you're going to gather basic information, but your job's not to investigate it in great detail.
That's correct.
Okay. As you arrived at this scene, again, what had been reported to you by dispatch?
That a male caller had called and said he found his wife and son shot.
And from that report to you, about how long did it take you to ultimately make it onto the scene?
It was roughly about 20 minutes.
Okay. When you arrived on scene, when you said one of the things that you do is secure the scene, were you at all concerned about any perpetrator still being there at that point in time?
When I arrived, not necessarily, just because he had already been there for quite a while. Whenever he called, it seemed, the way the call came in, that he discovered them like that and that there was nobody else there other than him and the wife and son.
So you're the first officer on scene, but you're not thinking the perpetrators are still there?
It's something you have to keep in the back of your mind, but not necessarily at the forefront.
Okay. All right. You didn't come in hot with guns drawn or anything like that?
No.
When you arrived at the scene and you walked and got out of your car, what did you see?
So as soon as I got out of my vehicle, I was walking down the rest of the driveway, which went between the dog kennel and the shed. As I could see Mr. Murdaugh down at the end of the driveway. As I approached toward him, I could see the male victim laying on the ground to my left, as well as the female victim on the ground to my right. The male victim was close to a small shed in the dog kennel on the left. There was a large deal of blood that had pooled around his body. Same thing for the female victim on the right. Also a large amount of blood around her body.
As you approached and at first saw the male victim and the female victim, what was your assessment? Was there any possible signs of life from your...
My initial assessment was that there was not. There appeared to be a large amount of blood around each of them, as well as brain matter.
Did you ultimately have a conversation with Mr. Murdaugh when you were out there?
I did.
All right. And do you see him here in the courtroom today, the person that you talked to?
I do.
And can you point him out to the jury, please?
Yes, sir. He's right there, wearing a dark blue or black jacket.
Your Honor, can the record reflect that he's identified Mr. Murdaugh?
It does.
When you ultimately approached Mr. Murdaugh, what's the first thing that you did?
The first thing I did was ensure that he did not have any weapons on him. That's standard procedure for arriving on a scene like that. Any kind of weapons that are anywhere on the scene, I want to be aware of just so I can know whether they're there or not, and if they are there, who has access to them at any point. And that's for my safety as well as other responding officers and for anyone else that's on scene.
Did Mr. Murdaugh give you any possible explanation for this when you approached him?
His immediate reaction was to start telling me about an incident that had happened with his son with a boating accident.
With the boating accident?
Yes, sir.
Had you asked him anything about that?
I did not.
You ultimately, were you wearing a body-worn camera that particular day?
I was.
You ultimately had a conversation with Mr. Murdaugh for a fairly extended period of time, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you ever see any tears in your interactions with Mr. Murdaugh?
He did not appear to be crying. He was upset, but I did not see any visible tears.
Did Mr. Murdaugh tell you that he had any sort of firearm?
He did. He stated that he had left from that scene, went to the residence, grabbed a shotgun from that residence, and then brought it back because he felt like he needed to have it just in case something else were to happen.
He told you he had gone back to the residence after finding the victims to get that gun.
He did.
What, if anything, did you do once he told you that he had gotten a gun?
First, he pointed out where the gun was. It was leaning against the vehicle that he was driving at the time. I could see that it was a camouflage shotgun. I spoke with him for a few more minutes, and just based off of how nervous he was acting and anxious and upset, I decided it was in everyone's best interest to get that shotgun and secure it in my vehicle so that no one else had access to it.
Okay. So you put that shotgun in your vehicle, is that correct?
I did.
What did you ultimately do with that shotgun? Did you later turn it over to additional law enforcement?
Yes, after it was secured in my vehicle, once SLED arrived on scene to do their further investigation, it was then turned over to SLED.
Bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
Your Honor. I have State 3, I believe I've moved the minutes without objection.
It's admitted without objection.
May I ask that we have the Elmo working, please? Judge, do you want to see it first? I believe it's submitted without objection. It's not a graphic image.
Proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I publish it to the jury?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to put what's been marked as... I'm going to put what's been marked as State's Exhibit 3 up on the screen and see if I can get it the right way. All right. You can't see it. Can you see that? You probably can't.
I can.
You can? All right. And do you recognize the what's in that particular image?
I do.
All right. And tell me what that is, please.
That's the shotgun that I secured in my vehicle on the scene.
Okay. Let's see.
Waters.
Yes, sir. Sergeant Greene, I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 4 for identification at this time. And see if you recognize this particular item.
Yes, sir, that would be the shotgun that I secured.
All right. Your Honor, this time we would move Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Objection.
Sorry, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, sir.
Admitted.
May I have Sergeant Greene show this firearm to the jury?
Yes.
I'll be sure not to point at anybody, of course. You know what gauge that firearm is?
Please, it's well gauge.
Thank you. All right, Sergeant Greene, I'm going to show you one other document before we move on to some other matters. All right, Your Honor, I believe I'd move to admit it states Exhibit 2 without objection.
And no objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
All right, I'm going to show this exhibit to you real quick and see if you recognize this document.
Yes, sir, that would be the chain of custody for the shotgun.
All right, is there a signature on that document?
It is.
All right, and what does this chain document reflect? Can you just generally explain what this means to the jury, please?
That I originally took possession of that weapon and then turned it over to SLED investigators.
All right. May I publish this exhibit, Your Honor?
Yes.
So up here it lists that there was a Vanelli Super Black Eagle. Did you unload this particular shotgun?
I did not.
Okay. But you ultimately turned the shotgun in its loaded state over to the agent listed here, is that
I
correct?
did. I did.
Did you alter or change the weapon in any way between the time you took it and the time you took it over to SLED?
No, I didn't manipulate it in any way.
Sergeant Greene, I'm going to show you what's been marked for identification at this time as State's Exhibit Number 1, see if you recognize this.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, and can you tell the jury what this is on this disc right here?
That would be the body camera footage from that incident.
From your arrival at Moselle Road and through the investigation until at some point you turned it off after it no longer needed to be on, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, Your Honor, at this time I'll move to admit State's Exhibit Number 1.
Just one. That clarification, that is this officer's body cam, which is a camera that's mounted on his body, is that correct?
That's correct. It's mounted
Okay.
on me. Yeah.
It's admitted.
Your Honor, permission to publish this exhibit to the jury. I'll need the. Your Honor, I would point out that there are graphic images on this, so everybody needs to cover up their monitors, please.
Parties to control what is presented and published in accordance with the court's order. The parties to police that yourselves.
Your Honor, we intend on covering the screen up when he gets to the graphic images and then uncovering it.
Well, they come pretty quickly, as you.
I remember. So, Mr. Griffin's ready.
Yeah, stay in town. I'm heading out there.
Advised a female shot in the head. The son is shot also. Not breathing. That motherfucker.
717 around Moselle.
Sergeant Greene, this is your body cam video, is that correct?
That's correct.
The first 15 minutes or so of this video are you running code, running at full speed or at least reasonable speed to get to this scene as fast as you can, is that correct?
Yes, sir. My lights and siren were activated so I can get there quickly.
Your Honor, at this time, I'm going to fast forward it until he arrives, I believe without objection from the defense.
Without objection, Your Honor.
Central on Bay 1 will be stationed at Moselle on Crosswalk.
Okay, 20.
The Central Battalion 1's in there waiting to
Past the driveway that I was supposed to have turned down. Like I said, everything's kind of dark out there. It wasn't clearly indicated, so.
Central, that was 4147 or 57?
4147. Keep your vehicle in the driveway with the flashes on. That's going to be the caller.
Copy, I'm going on scene. It's got a long driveway, but the mailbox out front is labeled. He's not at the end of the driveway. He might be up by the house.
The correct number for 4147 Moselle?
It is.
And is that the incident location where you discovered the victims?
That's correct.
Copy.
I'm getting out. Let's call her now.
Copy.
2 miles out.
Colleton, don't wait. Sheriff attached.
Right there to the left of the screen, what did you see right there?
To the left was Paul's body. He was laying face down on the ground. Large pool of blood around him, as well as a great deal of water that was immediately around his body.
Was it that water, was it just around, was it down the entire kennel concrete pad, or was it mostly just?
No, you could see walking down the kennel as I got out. The closer I got to Paul's body, the more water there was.
Had it been raining enough at this point in time to wet the entire, to cause that amount of water?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Objections overruled.
Answer the question, please.
I don't recall if it had been raining a whole lot that evening, but given where the water was, it did not appear that rain had caused that water.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is an objection. If I sustain the objection, you are to then disregard the question and any responses. If I overrule the objection, then you may consider the responses and the question is deemed appropriate. You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. I backed it up just a little bit, apparently too far, so I'm just going to roll from here again.
Colleton, don't wait. Sheriff attached.
Central 717 scene is secured. Got a Whiskey Fox, Whiskey Mike.
What are we seeing to the right of this image?
So on the right would be Maggie's body, also laying face down on the ground. A large pool of blood around her head.
And we see an individual standing. Who is that?
The individual standing in the background would be Mr. Murdaugh.
The person you previously identified in this courtroom?
That's correct.
Both gunshot wounds to the head.
And just to be clear, this location that you're standing right now is in Colleton County, is that correct?
It is, yes.
I want to let you know because of the scene, I did go get a gun and bring it down here.
It's in your vehicle? Do you have any guns on you at all?
No, sir, it's leaning up against the side of my car.
Okay. You're fine, man, you're fine. Turn around for me.
I don't have any.
Okay, yes, sir, I see that. Okay. This is your wife and
I
son?
don't have any.
Okay.
I noticed you shined your flashlight just a few seconds ago on the black vehicle. What did you shine your flashlight on just then?
You could see the shotgun leaning up against the side of that vehicle.
Were the flashers on the vehicle right there in the image?
I
Do you
believe so,
recall?
yes.
Okay.
It's bad. Check the pulses.
Yes, sir. This is the firearm you brought from inside the house?
Sir, yes, sir. I went and got, this is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
You know, he's been getting like punched. I know that's what it is.
Okay. When did,
Was that when you previously testified that he mentioned the boat case or the boat wreck?
That's correct. Prior to me asking him anything about it, he did mention it.
did you get home? Right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. My mom has late stages Alzheimer's and my dad is in the hospital.
Okay.
I left, I don't know what time. I can go back on my phone and tell you the exact times. Did you check?
Okay. Did I check what?
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that are, that's what they're gonna do, okay?
What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are, yes, sir. That gentleman that was out here already, he's one of the battalion chiefs, okay?
Right before that discussion, did Mr. Murdaugh offer to go on his phone and check?
He
What
did.
time?
He did. He wanted to verify exactly the timing of his arrival.
How did you pull up? You from back there?
I went to the house and they weren't home, which was odd. I tried to call.
Okay.
And then I knew they had been down here before I left to go to my mom's.
Okay.
And so that is loaded.
Okay.
You might want to unload it. But I mean,
Is this the only firearm with you? This is the only one, or is there any more in the truck?
I believe that's it.
You think that's the only one? Okay.
I'm 99%.
Do you normally
certain that's
have
right.
any other firearms in your vehicle?
I don't, but
Okay.
occasionally there's a pistol in there.
Okay.
So you're putting something on your hands. What are you doing right there?
Those are just gloves, so I could put on my hand to limit the contamination of any evidence.
You put those on before you handled the firearm, is that
Yes.
correct? Thank you.
Just wait right here for me for a second, okay?
Copy.
What are you doing right now?
At this point, I'm walking back to my vehicle to secure that shotgun inside my vehicle.
We can actually see you holding it to the left of the screen, is that correct?
That's correct. That's me holding the barrel of that shotgun.
Explain to us real quick a body-worn camera. Where is that located and where are these images coming from?
I generally put it right here on my chest, dead center of my chest.
And how is it activated? How is it turned off? Can you explain that to the jury a little bit as well?
Most of these cameras are activated in the patrol vehicles that deputies on patrol have. They're activated whenever you activate your blue lights. So as soon as I turn my blue lights on, it activates my dash camera as well as my body-worn camera.
And then how do you ultimately turn it off?
It's got a button on the front of it that you can press. If it did not originally activate it, you would press that button to turn it on, to start the recording, and then whenever you're done recording, you press that same button to stop the recording.
In this particular instance, how did it get activated? Was it when you turned on your blue lights to run code to the scene?
That's correct. It was activated with my blue lights.
And I've used the term run code. Do you know what that means?
Yes.
And can you explain that to the jury, please?
Sure. Running code is just whenever you turn your lights on as well as your siren to get wherever you need to get fast.
When you're moving quickly to respond to an emergency situation.
That's correct.
653 outside. Go ahead, sir. Well, I've already spoken with Captain Dealey.
Right there, you laid the shotgun inside your vehicle, is that correct?
That's correct. I laid it in front of the passenger seat in the front.
Did it remain there until it was turned over to SLED?
It did.
Go ahead, sir.
To the left of the screen, again, that's where the Paul was, is that correct?
That's correct. That's Paul laying on the ground.
And is that where you saw the water that you
It is.
described earlier?
It is.
Well, I've already spoken to Captain Deal. He's got crime scene. He's contacted them. He's also going to give us the assistance of a couple of field agents. Roger that. About 8 to 10 hours.
They are dead, aren't
I
they?
just turned on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Randy. Maggie's calling Dad. Where are you now?
What is Mr. Murdaugh doing at this particular time?
He's on the phone, pacing around, talking to someone. I'm not sure who he was talking to at that point.
Did he ask you to confirm if they were dead?
He did. He asked multiple times while I was on scene.
Did you ever see him, any tears, any physical tears?
I did not.
Did you ever see him approach the bodies?
I did not see him approach them, no.
Did you observe any visible blood on him?
There was no blood on him that I could see.
The bodies, as you saw them, was there a lot of blood around them, given the injuries they had suffered?
Yes, there was a pool of blood around each of the bodies that extended out from the body.
All right. Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now.
Affirmative.
That's my brother.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
Okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
Okay.
I rode around with Paul for 2 hours this afternoon in the pickup truck.
That's your son, Paul? Okay.
Somebody going to check them?
Yes, sir. They've already checked them.
They did check them?
Yes, sir.
It's official that they're dead?
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
When you observed these victims, was it obvious that they had injuries incompatible with life?
Yes, any reasonable person that came upon those bodies would have come to a conclusion that they were deceased.
Sorry.
You're fine.
I'm very sorry. Gotta call her parents.
What's her name?
Her name's Maggie Murdaugh. Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
What's her birthday?
Pause it right there. What did the defendant just say? Let me back it up.
Margaret Brandstetter Murdaugh. How you doing?
What did the defendant say right there?
So while I'm in the process of gathering information about the two victims from Mr. Murdaugh, somebody walks by behind me and he pauses what he's telling me to say, "Hey, how you doing?"
How you doing?
Yeah.
And who was that he said that to?
I'm not 100% certain. I believe it was a fire rescue individual.
What's her birthday?
9/15/68.
Okay. And what's your son's first name? You said Paul?
Paul Terry Murdaugh.
And what's his birthday?
Jason, do you have anybody
4.
coming through town that can stop and pick up that tent? I see lighting off in the distance.
What are they covering them up?
I got some getting dressed now, Sheriff. I'll have somebody stop and grab it.
Tell them they don't have to do that. They don't need to. Preserve what we can.
653. Where's it at? I'm in town.
I should try to be Delta 8 because he's going to be the only one that's got access.
What's
to
Paul's
where it is
birthday?
right now.
Copy.
April 14th, 1999, sir.
Put it up as wide as you can. That's fine. You said 99?
Sir?
He was born in 99?
He was born April 14th, 1999.
Okay. What's your first name, sir?
My name is Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Let me ask you this. In your interactions with Mr. Murdaugh, was he able to understand your questions and respond appropriately to what you were asking?
Yes.
Was he catatonic in any way?
No. He was able to answer all the questions that I asked him.
Was he panicking in any way?
He seemed upset, but I wouldn't say panicky.
Did you notice any labored breathing or anything like that from Mr. Murdaugh?
Yeah, he was breathing heavily. Never once did he complain about not being able to breathe. I mean, there were fire rescue guys out there. He didn't ask for any kind of medical attention or anything like that due to not being able to breathe.
Richard Alexander Murdaugh?
You familiar with the location?
No.
Sure.
Hey,
Be affirmative.
Cody,
It's what I'm thinking.
come around the truck and then go to the building. Come around the truck and then,
There's a set of prints also behind the trailer there.
yes.
I don't know if it's from
What's
ours or not. There's a set of footprints behind the trailer there too.
Who's that individual right there?
I'm not sure of his name. I just know that he works for Colleton County Fire Rescue. Colleton County Fire Rescue.
That's all the kind of stuff I said. I just wrote here so we can step over anything.
5-3, 4-3, just 8's gonna be the last one in and grabbing the 10.
In the background in the center of the screen, it looks like somebody's doing something with some yellow tape. Can you explain what that is to the jury, please?
That's correct. That's Deputy Pruitt, one of the deputies that I supervised. I instructed him to put up crime scene tape to include that vehicle. We put up crime scene tape to try to keep people out of the immediate crime scene area, preserve any possible evidence that's there.
At this point in time, had you noticed any evidence of firearms such as casings or spent shells or anything like that?
Yeah, as I was walking through, you can't necessarily see it on my body camera, but as I was walking through, I could see shell casings, particularly around Maggie's body.
All right. And a shell casing, would they be for like a rifle round or a pistol round?
They
or-
appeared to be rifle rounds.
And could you tell just from walking by what type of ammunition at that point in time?
I couldn't tell what type. I could tell that they appeared to be rifle, and that's about it.
And again, you weren't stopping to collect those. You were managing the scene as you described before.
That's
so-
correct.
Just go over to that corner of the building.
I'm almost to you. Let me see what we have first and whether or not we're gonna handle that part or not.
What are you shining your light on right there?
So there in the background behind where Mr. Murdaugh is standing, you can see several sets of tire tracks. The grass was really wet that night, so those tracks appeared to be really fresh. So it caught my eye.
All right. And why did it catch your eye?
It just seemed odd that it appeared to be that many sets of tire tracks since he said he'd pulled up, went to the house, and came back. It just appeared that there were more than just that.
It appeared that there were more tracks than just that.
That's correct.
I see quite a few tire tracks in here. Were any of these you going in and out?
No, I came in here and I left one time and I came back.
Okay.
But the rest of them, maybe
Okay.
from earlier, but
Okay.
only 2 are mine.
Did you go out this way at all?
No.
Really, it's right.
Hey, stay here. Got a whole bunch of stuff right there. I don't want to disturb.
And then that's why I'm trying to get to the door there so we can kind of get around that way.
Your best way is probably going to be back through those rocks because we can't get any tracks off those rocks anymore.
We'll go back around the other way we just came.
Okay. Thank you.
Each same.
Yup, do you have names or anything for them?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get that in a little bit then. That's
Okay.
fine.
vehicle are you approaching right now?
That was the vehicle that Mr. Murdaugh said that he had approached that scene in.
Was that a black Suburban, to your recollection?
It is.
What unit's 23 on Moselle? I'm 7 unit on scene. Are you behind the house?
There's several of us out here. There's
Right there, that would be Maggie's body right in front of that shed, is that correct?
That's correct. It's covered up by a sheet at this point.
a long dirt driveway right next to the mailbox that says 4147, and you'll see all our lights down here at this shed thing.
You didn't come through Brick Hollow?
Negative.
Delta 89 on duty, going out to Moselle.
Who was that standing way off in the distance there?
That would be Mr. Murdaugh.
Where did he spend the majority of his time while you were there after your initial interaction with him?
From this point on, his general time was spent in that area where he's currently standing.
Pretty far away from the scene?
That's correct.
Delta 653. Telephone Saudi.
What was occurring right there? with the
So what
other
was
deputy?
occurring right there?
Yeah.
So both of those deputies, or Deputy Pruitt would be on the left and Deputy McDowell would be on the right. Deputy McDowell was taking small pieces of crime scene tape and just setting them by shell casings, I believe. As road patrol officers, we don't generally have those little placards that you'll a lot of times see in crime scene photos. But to prevent somebody from accidentally stepping on them due to it being so dark out there, we tend to take something small like a piece of paper, a piece of crime scene tape, set it next to it just to indicate it a little bit better.
Again, part of the job of a first responder to sort of protect the scene until the crime scene investigators get there.
That's correct.
Both these individuals, were you supervising them that night?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
Looking at this perspective right here, to the left of the screen is whose body?
To the left right there in the forefront would be Maggie, and in the further back you can also see where Paul is laying.
Okay. Was Paul next to or in the kennel area?
Yes.
I think his brother. He said he was calling somebody. He said he was calling somebody. Yeah, I'm sure he was. There's a couple of shell casings right there.
Yeah, those will be easy to find. I was just marking a couple that were in the gravel. It might be harder to see at some point. Y'all familiar with this family? Yes.
I wasn't until he told me the names. Last
Fill you
name
in later.
Murdaugh.
Did you know this family prior to this?
I did not.
I don't think there's gonna be anything for you.
What was that?
Did I tell you?
You said for Evo to do?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Hey.
Who was Evo?
Evo would be Deputy McDowell's K9.
Hey, watch your step. Huh? There are? Okay.
Who is that approaching right now?
That would be my immediate supervisor at the time, Lieutenant Lonnie Nettles.
gentleman in the white shirt is the husband of her, father of him. That is Paul Murdaugh. This is his mother. Paul Murdaugh was that guy in the boating accident from a while back, if you remember.
Yeah, yeah.
Just then, were you describing the boat wreck?
Yes, it had been in local news previously, so.
And it was your understanding that Paul was involved in that?
In some way, I had no idea about the actual details of the case to know what his involvement was, honestly.
Most likely. He did have a firearm whenever I pulled up. It's a shotgun. It's been secured in my vehicle.
It's 300 blackout.
1017, when you get a chance, can you give dispatch a phone call?
You will have to give me just a few minutes, but yes, I will.
That dispatch call, was that related to the case in any way?
I don't believe it was. I don't remember what that phone call ended up being about. As a supervisor, if a lot of us are tied up at one time, they will tend to give me a phone call to let me know that a certain call is pending or something else is going on. Just to help keep the radio traffic free, they'll call me on my cell phone instead.
Did your entire squad respond to this this particular call, or did somebody?
There was one deputy that remained in service.
Okay. Remained out, did not respond here, but remained on the road.
Correct.
653.
Who can start a log?
653.
Who's the most expendable that can start a log? Let's put it that way.
This is, can you start a crime scene log, please?
A log started. Sled's on the way. Let's push.
Here's
Can we run the tape
2007, ready to be
there to there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's, from that last
Take-
pole
go
right
start
there
a log.
to that last
Get a
pole?
piece of paper, start writing names and times. You don't have any kind of paper?
Who's that individual right there in the center of the screen? To
That
the
would
right?
be Detective to the right.
Yes.
That would be Deputy Pruitt.
And what did you just ask him to do?
Start a crime scene log.
And tell the jury what that is, please.
Sure. So a crime scene log is established as soon as additional people start to arrive on scene. We document exactly who comes into the actual crime scene, as well as the exact time that they come into the crime scene.
Here, borrow that.
We can push it from that pole to that pole.
Yep. Sure. I do see some. That look old or fresh? Old, yes.
What are we doing right here with the tape?
So I'm securing it to the corner of that part of the shed to run it along to a shed on the opposite side of that area. We just expanded the crime scene out a little bit further.
To protect a larger area?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You'll need to speak more directly into the mic, or can you increase the volume, Madam Clerk, of that mic? Just a little.
This one that's working?
I'm referring to the witness.
Oh, sorry.
Increase his volume, or? All right, thank you.
Yes, sir. I usually don't have a problem being too quiet, but speak up for us if you would, please. All right, so you're securing the crime scene tape. Let's proceed.
I'll just hold the light for you. Go all the way to that post. Marnie, let's just keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, I think we got it.
This is 5-3, all the responding units to Moselle Road stopped at the road. No one else come down the dirt road. Stop at the road.
That's Sierra 77, probably doing that 66 on 95. Copy.
What's the other way up here?
From back that way, I guess. Where the house is, I guess.
Okay, that must be.
You referring to the Whiskey Mike, left you off with a key? Affirmative.
We've heard on this video the term Whiskey Mike. Can you tell me what that term refers to?
Yeah, when we say Whiskey Mike, we're referring to a white male. A Whiskey Fox or a Whiskey Foxtrot would be a white female.
And in the context of this particular scene, who's the Whiskey Mike and who's the Whiskey Fox or Whiskey Foxtrot?
As I was approaching, you could hear me say to dispatch to my radio that there was a Whiskey Mike, the Whiskey Mike referring to Paul, Whiskey Fox referring to Maggie.
Do we have anything else? Negative. Copy.
To the very right of the screen, well, strike that. I'll wait.
Correct.
Like I was trying to say, I have a notepad, it's just I'm using the back side of all the paper, so all the front side of the paper has names and information on it.
Well, you can borrow mine for a minute. It's perfectly fine, Cody.
Wait a minute. I just didn't want you to be like, we're doing the officer, doing fucking paper now. I have paper for calls.
Do you not have any crime scene log sheets? Hey, it's 717. I was asked to give you guys a call.
Have it in the list.
Hi. Okay. Okay. I will inquire and I'll get back to you. Okay.
Want to close it in?
Yeah. That's all right, I'm gonna grab it.
There, do you recognize those individuals?
I do.
Can you tell us who they are?
On the far left would be Detective Tyndall. In the forefront toward the center would be Captain Chapman. And on the other side of him, in the lighter colored shirt with the black vest, was Barry McCroy, worked for Fire Rescue.
Okay. Did the sheriff respond to this particular incident, to your recollection?
Yes, he did.
But as far as who was the senior officer actually working the scene, at this point in time until SLED arrives, who was it at this point?
That would be Captain Chapman.
Captain Chapman?
That's correct.
That's all right, I'm gonna grab a couple.
I got some right here, Judge. Hey, you want us to close that in?
Sir, was that?
You want us to close it in?
Yeah.
There's a guy, I don't know if you want to see what the other guy is, whoever Eric is. I guess the caller. There's a guy over here that's wanting to talk to him. I told him what he's
Don't even know who Eric is. I know an Alex over
Alex.
there.
Alex.
Okay.
Okay.
There's a guy over here that wants to talk to him.
Yeah, but I didn't know if you wanted me to tell him that or if you wanted me to just chill for a minute. Or if you wanted me to escort him over.
He does not need to walk over
No,
there.
I mean a long way.
He does not need to go over there.
So you can stay there then.
He can't.
Let me ask you this. Before you had referred to a brother arriving, is that correct?
Yes.
And was that a brother? Was he allowed to talk to Alec and go over to Alec?
I believe he did. I don't recall. I never actually interacted with him at all.
And then this discussion right here with Deputy Pruitt, what was going on right there?
So there was someone that had arrived on scene and wanted to go and speak with Mr. Murdaugh. I told him to just wait a minute on allowing him over there so we could determine the best way to allow them to talk, simply because the crime scene was so large and we did not want to contaminate anything that didn't need to be.
Okay. To your knowledge, was that individual, whoever it was, allowed to interact with Mr. Murdaugh?
I believe so. He was eventually, yes.
People that arrived were allowed to go see Mr. Murdaugh, is that correct?
That's correct.
He was not in custody at any time, is that correct?
No.
I don't have the caller and the caller's brother's name in here because I don't know their names yet, but I can get it. But I didn't.
I already wrote it in there.
Alright. I don't know where you were at. I just found the first empty page I can find.
Female victim, male caller.
And then the other guy though, I mean, he hasn't came inside the tape
Then
yet.
don't have to worry about him. Just make sure you get the, here.
For me and you and all of us out here.
Oh my God.
Is that what you're about to say?
Yes.
What are you doing on the computer right here? Do you recall?
Yeah, so on those computers that are mounted in our patrol vehicles, we can see details of the call for service or other calls for service. In this case, I was looking at the information for the incident on Moselle to determine what units had been dispatched, what units arrived, and when they arrived, due to Deputy Pruitt trying to establish the crime scene log.
And you use the term call for service, which is a police term, but that essentially means responding to any emergency or
Any type of call. Any citizen that would call our dispatch center to request law enforcement assistance or fire rescue assistance, it's called, we just refer to it as a call for service.
I came on scene at 22:26.
22, 26?
Yes.
Yep.
You say you came on scene at 22:26.
That's correct.
For those of us who don't know military time, can you tell us what that is?
That would be 10:26 p.m.
And that's June 7th, 2021?
That's correct.
And whoever U21 is with fire rescue, just write U21, fire rescue U21.
Yep.
And then
That was the same time as you?
he came on scene, yeah, same time as me, it's fine. Medic 18 at 22:27.
Had it started to rain more at this point?
Yeah, it had started raining at this point, yes.
.758 on scene 22:30. Same time as you. .653 on scene at 22:39.
22, 39?
Yep.
Those numbers that you're referring to, what do those represent?
So the numbers would be the badge numbers of individuals arriving on scene.
You're just recording when various people arrived in the computer?
They're recorded in the computer, so when we arrive on scene, we let dispatch know our number and that we're on scene. They log it into the computer, and then we can then put it on our crime scene log.
And that's all I have as far as times on this goes.
Seven eight seven Central. Alright. Copy. When you're clear, I have a call on Majestic of a suspicious vehicle. Copy. Where's that located? 223 Majestic Wait in Cottesville. 10-4. There's a Cottesville unit that can assist. That'd be great.
Pretty sure Majestic Oaks is their jurisdiction anyway.
Central 505, I believe that's in our jurisdiction anyway, I'll take care of that.
Copy.
Twenty-three Majestic Oak.
I'm trying to get it.
That individual walking off to the left of the screen, who was that?
The one walking away from the screen or that just approached?
Walking away.
That was Deputy McDowell.
All right, and then the center of the screen, who was that?
The one that just walked up and is in center screen now would be Captain Kraus.
All right, and then next to him, facing the body camera?
That would be Captain Chapman.
All right, and then to the far right.
Detective Tyndall.
The Greene Trailblazer. Correction. It's unknown what type of vehicle she had.
Were there dogs in those kennels to your recollection?
There were a couple of dogs. I don't remember the exact number, but I do remember seeing some.
And the Greene Trailblazer in her yard that belongs to her. She says she can only see the tail lights of the vehicle. She is also threatening to use it on fossil. It happened about 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, I'm in there, if you can, so let's put the bill down possibly.
Copy.
Yes, sir. We're gonna discuss it later and find out.
Okay, just I was making sure I didn't miss something.
Nope.
That discussion right there, did that have anything to do with the crime scene or anything like that?
No, it was not related at all.
What'd you just put on your hands then?
Those would be latex gloves.
And the gloves you put on that you described earlier to the jury, what were those gloves?
Those are more tactical gloves. They're not necessarily ideal for handling any kind of evidence, but due to me already being out there next to the shotgun, I did not have any latex gloves on my person, so I used what was available.
All right. And why are you putting on latex gloves right now?
They were wanting to look under the sheet where Paul was, so just to prevent any kind of contamination of any possible evidence at all, we would just always put gloves on.
Well, the dad's over there. Actually, hold on. Some people just won't do it.
Fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's right, it shouldn't be you about five to be law enforcement or.
There is his wall marker back there.
I don't think you're gonna fit a damn 300 blackout under there.
Not unless it's the shortest 300 blackout that's ever been made.
I don't think he put that phone back.
What is that discussion about right there?
So the whole purpose for even trying to look up under him was to determine if there was an additional firearm on scene already, possibly under Paul. There was 300 blackout casings found near Maggie. They were trying to determine if there was possibly a 300 blackout rifle under Paul.
And were y'all concerned that there may be one under Paul?
We just trying to rule it out as a possibility
And what was that possibility then?
that he could have shot Maggie,
And then did what?
shot himself.
So you're looking to see if there's a gun underneath if he had shot himself and then fallen on top of it?
That's correct.
I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked their pulses.
Did you see a phone near Paul when you arrived on the scene?
Yes, there was a phone laying on top of him near his back pockets of his shorts.
Back it up just a little bit. Is that it right down there at the bottom?
That's it.
I don't think you're gonna fit a damn 300 blackout under there.
Not unless it's the shortest 300 blackout that's ever been made.
I don't think he put that phone back. I haven't asked the dad about the phone, but dad did say he came over and checked their pulses. Beyond that, I don't know what else he may have done. He had a shotgun. He did have a shotgun with him, and I have secured that in my vehicle.
Yeah, but this upward shot, this is one over the ceiling, one on the bottom, yeah, but that's because you get his head on.
Yep. So I've got multiple gunshots out of that window too.
Do we see a shell?
At least 3.
Shells.
Got it.
Right to the left of the screen, there appears to be, what does that appear to be to the very left of the screen?
There's some dog crates over there. On top of one of the dog crates is actually a dead chicken.
Say that again, I'm sorry?
A dead chicken
Okay.
on the far left-hand side of the screen.
Could you, Your Honor, with your permission, could you step down to the screen and point what you're talking about to the jury?
You may.
It's difficult to see, but right here on top of that small dog crate was what appeared to be a dead chicken. I'm sure if you did that, I couldn't see it. Could you do it?
Do it again, please.
This area right here.
Right, thank you.
Yes.
Do you need in and out times or just times arrive? It's like if they exit multiple times and come back in.
You don't need to keep doing all that.
Okay. I wanted to make sure before.
Yeah.
Is that your light's on right there?
That's correct. That's when I was really noticing the chicken.
Just so you know, I've got at least 5 holes in the window in the back of that shed where rounds were exiting out back that way.
Which is gonna be butt got because of the damn what and all that. You used carry shotgun when we got
It
it.
is currently in my vehicle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's stand for a moment. All right, we'll be seated. You may proceed.
That's the extent of the video that state will publish at this time, Your Honor. Let me ask you a few other questions if I could. Sergeant Greene. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit number 5 to your testimony and see if you recognize this image.
Yes, sir. That would be an image from my body camera when I was looking at the tire tracks in the grass.
Have the input back to the Elmo, please. Your Honor, this time I would move to admit State's Exhibit 5, I believe, without objection.
Any objection to State's Exhibit number 5? It's admitted without objection.
May I publish it, Your Honor?
Yes. Publish any exhibit that has been admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, it doesn't show up on the screen that great, but who is that person in the image right there?
That would be Mr. Murdaugh.
All right, and then just kind of in this area, it's more clear on the video, but that would be the tire
Yeah.
tracks you described earlier?
Yes, where I'm shining my flashlight at that point is where the tire tracks were.
We cut the video off after playing sort of the relevant parts, but what did you do for the remainder of this scene as the evening continued?
So the remaining part of my role would have just been making sure the crime scene stayed secure, people stayed out of where they weren't supposed to be. Investigators were handling the remainder of the investigation.
Did eventually anyone from the SLED, the State Law Enforcement Division, show up?
They did. I don't believe that would have been captured on my body camera, but they did, yes.
At some point, did you like to turn your body camera off?
I did. I cleared it with my supervisor, Captain Kraus, to ensure that I would not be needed for any additional investigative purposes, talking to Mr. Murdaugh, or handling any additional evidence. And once that was okayed, I turned it off.
And so that was consistent with standard police procedures and practices and when to turn the body camera off?
That's correct.
You just didn't decide to do it willy-nilly or anything?
That's correct.
At what point, just roughly, do you remember, did you clear the scene or leave the scene?
I don't think I left the scene until several hours later.
Were you still there when SLED crime scene arrived?
Yes.
Did you remain the entire time they were there, or did you leave at some point?
I would have left prior to the end of my shift. I couldn't tell you the exact time that it was, but they were multiple units, including SLED and Colleton County investigators, still on scene when I left.
That's all the questions I have for this witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
I'm going to take Set up some of the audio visual stuff.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break at this time. Please go to the jury room. You may proceed.
Please, Your Honor. Deputy Greene, for my own edification, I'm curious. I've called over several weeks, left you voicemails for you to call me back and talk. Have I not?
I haven't received any voicemails.
You don't check your voicemail?
Did you call my cell phone? or-
No, I called your office.
Okay,
I don't have your cell phone.
okay. It's possible they sent you to the wrong one, I don't know.
But you've spent an extensive amount of time talking to Mr. Waters about your testimony, have you not?
I've spoken with him a few times, yes.
How many times?
3 or 4, maybe at least.
And has he reviewed with you the points he was trying to make?
We've discussed the body camera footage extensively.
Right. Let me go to a specific piece of video. I apologize, Your Honor, the AV situation requires me to have my AV guy come up and work from there. Did you get that list? So, as he's preparing this, you indicated, you were asked by Mr. Waters, said there was water on the ground, right? It hadn't been raining, and you saw water, right?
That's correct.
And as I understand it, and we can look at the video in just a minute, that water was primarily, at least what we see in your video, on the concrete area around the dog pens, correct?
That's what it appeared, yes.
Okay. And let's go to that first.
Colleton, don't worry. Sheriff.
Sorry, Your Honor, the technology is difficult. Glad to help. Glad to help. Got it.
Colleton, don't worry. Sheriff.
Go ahead a little bit further. Okay, back it up just a little bit, could you? Just back it up a little. Okay, yeah, now start right there. I may have to stop for just a second.
Colleton, don't worry. Sheriff.
Okay, stop it. Now, you're walking down in front of the dog pens. Is this the water you're referring to?
Yes.
And you have dogs?
I have 1 dog.
You don't keep in a pen?
No, he stays in the house.
Okay. But if you had hunting dogs and you had this line of, how many pens do you think there were?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I mean, there's a lot.
8, 9, 10?
Sure.
And are you familiar with the concept of washing a pen out after a dog defecates in the pen?
I've never personally done it, but I'm sure that's what you would do to clean out a pen.
Okay. And in the pen, I mean, there's water inside the pens and outside the pens, correct?
That's what it looks like.
Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Go to the next one, please. I apologize, Your Honor. And again, we're looking at the dog pen, and the water appears to be outside the pen on the concrete.
I would object. I think that the video needs to be stopped for counsel to ask this question and for the witness to respond.
You're posing a question while playing a video,
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
or making a statement while playing the video.
I'm sorry, the technology again is beyond my experience. Okay, so again, this shows the same area, shows water on the concrete outside these dog pens, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Go to the next one, please.
You don't need to keep doing that. Yeah.
So again, this shows, and actually there's a light shining and you see a couple dogs. So those pens are occupied by dogs. There's water outside the pen and inside the pen, as if somebody had attempted to wash something out of the pens, correct?
There is water both inside and outside of the pen, yes.
You got one more? No, let's not do that. So I want you to go to the transcript. You need to switch it to the Again, I apologize, Your Honor, but the technology is more complicated than. Okay. So let's proceed on. Let's see if I can clarify a couple matters. Let's talk about this shotgun. This is the shotgun that Mr. Murdaugh was carrying or had leaning up a car against a car when you got there. Is that correct?
It was leaning up against that vehicle, yes.
And according to what you testified to just a moment ago, these are the shells, the chain of custody on the shotgun and the shell. They went together.
Whenever I released the shotgun to the SLED agent who took possession of it, I was unaware of any shells that may have been inside of it at the time that it was handed over. That was what was discovered inside the gun, is my understanding.
Okay. Where's that chain of evidence document? Okay, would you publish this to the jury, please?
You would like me to read it?
Yes, please.
The Camo Benelli Super Black Eagle 3 12-gauge shotgun, serial number U573210E17, one unfired shot shell 12-gauge Federal, one unfired shot shell Winchester 16-gauge.
Okay, so there's a 12-gauge shell and a 16-gauge shell.
Yes.
12-gauge shotgun.
Yes.
This may be way beyond your experience, but can you fire a 16-gauge shotgun shell from a 12-gauge shotgun?
I wouldn't recommend trying it.
You recommend what?
I would not recommend trying it. I don't know that it would actually work or not.
Could it result in damage to the person trying to fire the shotgun?
More than likely.
Jack, he's already said he doesn't have an answer to that.
Objection is overruled.
So you would not, you can actually harm yourself. It could blow up if you pull the trigger on a 16-gauge and a 12-gauge shotgun.
I've never tried it nor seen it tried, so I don't
And the
know.
reason you don't do that is because you could have personal harm from doing it, right?
It's possible.
So this shotgun, according to the chain of evidence you've just read, had a 16-gauge and a 12-gauge in it.
Correct.
And it was leaning up against a car.
It was. The shotgun was.
Now, I'm sort of interested as to,
Sure.
I'm sort of interested as to why, well, let me just cut to the chase on this. There's discussions on this tape, or maybe others, that there was a theory that Paul had shot his mother and then shot himself. Is that correct? That's out on the scene.
Yes.
Because she had been shot multiple times, and he had been shot with a shotgun. At least one of the shots, we all believe was upward. That's why his brains were all over the ceiling.
That part I don't know. I wasn't involved in that part of it.
At the scene.
I did not discuss anything being shot upward. I don't recall saying that.
Did you hear discussions to that of your fellow officers?
Of a shot being fired upward? That's what it looked like they were saying, yes.
Okay. And further, I think in front of you, one of the officers saying that brains are on the ceiling. There's blood all over the place, correct?
I don't recall them saying brain was upward. I don't recall.
Okay. And further, you, as you're discussing this with them, indicate, let me make sure I get this correct. You indicate there are multiple, or someone indicates to you there are multiple blackout rounds around Maggie's body in the vicinity, correct?
Not rounds, but shell casings.
Sorry, shell casings. Now, let me ask you this. When you got there, didn't the fire chief and the fire department arrive before you did?
No, sir, I was first on scene.
Okay, did they arrive while you were there?
One of the fire rescue workers, I believe it was Barry McCroy.
And when you got there, we hear unidentified person, and in your notes, you indicate it was the fire chief, I believe, that indicated to you, pointed out to you, tire tracks, and you went over and looked at those tire tracks. And there were multiple tire tracks coming and going, correct?
I don't know that someone indicated them to me. I believe I just saw them.
Okay. And what did you do to preserve those?
The tire tracks, nothing.
And you certainly are not an expert in tire tracks.
I'm not.
So you couldn't tell whether it was multiple vehicles or one vehicle.
No,
And it may have been multiple vehicles.
may have been.
Did you take pictures of the tracks?
I did not take any pictures of the scene.
Instruct anyone to take pictures of the tracks?
No, sir, that's not my job.
When SLED arrived, did you tell them about the tracks?
No, sir, not my job.
Do you regret not doing that?
It's not part of my job description.
So what's your job to even tell them there were multiple tire tracks?
If it had come up, if I had been asked, yes.
And in addition to that, since they were not secured in any way, multiple vehicles, law enforcement vehicles and others, drove over those tracks.
That's possible. I wasn't over there the whole time to know what kind of vehicles were driving in the area.
Well, by the time SLED got there, did you strike that? You never took SLED over and pointed out tire tracks.
Not to my recollection, I did not.
Was there somebody there at this, with your department that should have done that?
I have no idea what they do with their job descriptions as far as what they point out to additional investigators.
Did somebody from Fire and Rescue point out footprints?
I believe on my body camera there is a fire rescue individual pointing out some footprints.
Okay, did you take pictures of those?
I did not.
Did you tell SLED about them?
I did not.
So nobody attempted to determine whether those were Maggie's footprints, Paul's footprints, or at least that night, there was no effort by you or your department to preserve those?
By me, no, I cannot speak for everyone else.
Okay. And let me ask you this. How about go to 4439, please? And let's watch 10, at least 10, if not 15 seconds of that. Okay, if you go to page 17, line 10.
Your Honor, I'd object. They're putting a transcript that's
No,
not
no,
been...
no, we're going to play the video.
It's up on the screen. It's up on the screen, Your Honor, I object.
I apologize.
Can you take it down, please? Thank you.
We prepared a transcript. It's synced with the video.
Okay, well, I object to that. Your Honor, I object. This transcript's not been provided. There's no need for a transcript. The officer is here. They can play the video and he can comment on it.
Transcript being offered.
Not all, I'm using it to direct the audio-visual man to record.
Well, you have questions for the witness, questions for your IT guy, you're just reading, ready to proceed. I understand, and we're waiting for you. Okay.
Yep.
I'm ready. What was the time, 17?
It's page 17. Line, start at line 8. No, I don't. I don't have that. That's my thought. It's just synced with the render. It's not. Can you find it back? No time. Let me, rather than having to play this, let me just cut to the chase. It's taking too much time. On this transcript, on this tape, fire rescue person says to you, I believe you agreed with me, set of prints behind the trailer. You were told there's...
Jack, he's publishing again this
I'm
transcript.
not publishing, I'm asking.
Your Honor,
Did you...
I object.
I haven't heard a question yet.
I'd like to make one. Were you told by fire and rescue there's a set of prints behind the trailer?
Yes.
Okay. And did he tell you that they attempted to not disturb those footprints in any way?
I don't recall exactly
Okay.
what was said.
Let me further ask you. You asked Mr. Murdaugh, we heard this on the tape, you talked about the tire tracks coming and going, and he told you those weren't his tire tracks, correct?
He did say that they were not.
Okay. And further, he indicated to you, Mr. Murdaugh did, that he felt this was related to the boat case, and you indicated you knew about the boat case, you read about the boat case.
That's correct.
And in the boat case, Paul had been charged with 3 counts of felony BUI, killing a young girl and wounding 2 others, correct?
I don't know much details about that case. I really don't.
Okay. But Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you that the threats made against Paul,
He did.
and that he even got in a fight once about it.
I believe he said punched.
Punched, okay. And so on the scene, he believed that Paul's death was connected to someone angry about the boat case, correct?
Object to that, Your Honor, as to what he believed. Asking the
What?
witness what another person believed.
Objection is overruled.
Thank you. On the scene, Mr. Murdaugh indicated to you he thought the death of his son was related to his son's involvement in the death of the young lady and the injury of 2 others in the boat case, correct?
It appeared that that's what he was getting at, yes.
That's on the tape. Now, let's talk a little bit about preservation of the crime scene. What did you do other than put yellow tape up to preserve the crime scene?
That is about the extent of my job, is to put up the tape and make sure people that don't need to cross it don't cross it.
And I noticed that there were officers walking around putting little pieces of tape near shell casings.
There was one officer doing that, yes.
And in the process of doing that, I didn't see any lights other than maybe a flashlight. Were there any, did y'all put up any sort of high intensity lights so people could make sure they weren't stepping on something in the dark?
At that point, there was no light, no additional lighting that had been put up, no.
But you and your officers were walking through that entire area, is that correct?
We were walking in the area, yes.
Okay, and did you actually walk, I mean, the feed room, and let me, maybe this is the best way to do this. Holly, pictures, please. I'd like to use the Elmo. Photographs. I'm going to use the Elmo in just a moment to show this witness. I'm going to offer these into evidence without objection by the state, as I understand it.
Once they're marked, I have no objection. I would note they're graphic and they need to be shielded from view.
Elmo ready?
They can be marked. What would the exhibit numbers be for the defense? If defense 1 and 2 are admitted without objection.
Okay, good. So, thank you. I'm going to first show you the picture. See if you can identify it, please.
That would be a picture of Paul,
And the second one, which would be exhibit number 2.
picture of Maggie.
When you say picture of Paul and picture of Maggie, these are crime scene photos, correct?
They appear to be, yes.
Is this what you saw that night?
Yes.
Both of these pictures
Yes.
accurately depict what you saw that night.
Yes.
So as you look at this, I want to make sure I understand. One of Paul's feet is still inside, this is the feed room behind him, correct?
Yes.
And this is his head, lots of blood, and this would be a part of his brain lying next to him, correct?
I don't know if that's part of his brain or not.
All right, so it's fair to say you didn't know whether that was part of his brain. When you first saw him, you didn't know whether his injuries were catastrophic and he was dead, or did you?
It was very clear that it was catastrophic.
Okay, that's great. Now, when you came upon the scene, clearly this feed room was part of the crime scene, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're taught to keep the crime scene pristine, correct?
As pristine as possible, yes.
There was no reason for you to go in there, was there?
Me at the time, no.
Okay. Was there any reason for the police, before the SLED crime folks showed up, was there any reason for y'all to go in there?
There was no reason for me to go in there. I cannot speak if there was a reason for another officer to have gone in there.
Well, let me ask you this. Did y'all have any sort of crime scene expert with you that night, someone that processes crime scenes?
Investigators do process crime scenes.
Okay. Do you remember going in that feed room?
I don't remember if I did specifically or not.
But you shouldn't have if you did, correct?
It's not to say that I shouldn't have. If there was something that needed to be done in there, then yes.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I think one of the, and you would agree with me, one of the cardinal rules of a crime scene is keep it pristine. Don't walk over things. Try to preserve tire tracks. Get pictures of them. Footprints. All those sorts of things. Was somebody with the officers with you, were you in charge of the scene?
I was in charge of the deputies that were under my immediate supervision until someone higher than me had arrived on scene.
And were those deputies directed by you or anyone to do something to preserve the tire tracks? Pictures? Cordon them off? Cover them up?
I did not give anyone that instruction, no.
So you didn't do that. In terms of Paul, where Paul was laying, was anybody instructed, put a cordon around him? There's no reason to go into the feed room. There's no reason to do anything obtrusive until the SLED crime scene processes. And they're on the way at this point, right?
I believe they were, yes.
And so okay, so let's put the other one up. And identify this for me, please.
That's Maggie Murdaugh.
Your Honor, may we approach here briefly?
And can you identify this for the jury, please?
That picture? Yeah. It's Maggie Murdaugh.
After she's been killed.
That's correct.
And by the way, when you saw her was it apparent that she was deceased? You believe, but have you ever seen a dead body before?
I have seen multiple, yes.
Many, right?
Yes.
So you're sort of an expert in this area, who's dead, who's not, who ought to get EMS there to check them out or not, correct? You make that call often?
Yes.
Okay. But you could understand, obviously, Alex Murdaugh's concern that they might be alive, that maybe, you're not saying that he shouldn't be concerned if somebody check out both Maggie and Paul to make sure they were dead, right?
He was very concerned about that, yes.
Okay. Now, as to Maggie Murdaugh, we see these numbers. Did y'all do these numbers, or were they done after y'all were there?
I don't know when those numbers were done. They were not placed by myself.
For your team?
I can't say that for sure, certain.
We see that in the video, that they're putting down yellow tape. They're not putting these down, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you also, according to the video we saw, a number of your officers are walking around marking where cartridges are, right?
They were.
Did they pick any of them up?
No, not to my knowledge.
Well, later on, we see them talking to you and others on the video where they're saying these rounds came from a blackout. They were blackout rounds, for blackout.
300 blackout, yes, sir.
Right. Did they get down on their hands and knees and look, or, did they pick
You would
them
have to
up?
ask them. I don't know what they did to know that they were 300 blackout rounds.
Well, who were those officers that were walking around her without a light on, perhaps stepping on evidence, correct? Who were those officers?
Deputy McDowell and Deputy Pruitt were both in that area.
Were they doing that pursuant to your instruction?
They were not specifically instructed to do it. They just took the initiative to do it.
Okay, I've done Elmo. I want to play. Where'd you have the other sheet? You ready? Do I have to turn the Elmo on?
Are we good? Yeah, we're good.
Well, the dad's over there. Actually,
Okay, so this is, your officer is putting a sheet on Paul's body?
Not putting a sheet on. The sheet was already there.
Already there, okay, continue please.
So people just, fire rescue might have some more sheets we can steal.
That's why it shouldn't be in by the law enforcement.
There is more for them.
Who's that, who's that standing inside the feed room?
Just inside that doorway was
Yeah.
Deputy McDowell.
Okay, were you the present, is that your body cam, so you're watching him do it, right?
That's correct.
Should he have done that?
Stand where he's standing.
Standing inside the feed room?
It's part of the crime scene. We're all standing inside of the crime scene.
Inside what?
The crime scene? We are all standing in the same crime scene.
I understand the same crime scene, but clearly you believe, based on discussion, and everyone in your unit believed, that the fatal shot was made where he's basically standing, correct? That, in that area?
Where we are all standing.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is that procedure to walk around on top of an area where shots have been fired? That perhaps, and I think even in this, they're talking about tissue or brain matter laying there. Aren't you supposed to, you don't put anything on your feet?
Is there a question? There's not a question in that statement.
Let's sustain, you must pose questions.
Did you in any way have your men or women put protective gear on their feet? I saw you put gloves on, but did they put anything to insulate themselves from contaminating the scene?
On their feet, no.
In many instances, departments around the country have people dress in a gown to keep their DNA, their hair from contaminating the scene. Did you do that?
We do not on road patrol with Colleton County. As as standard practice, no.
You do not do that.
Not as standard practice, no.
Have you ever done that?
I have not.
Have you ever had something covering your feet when you're walking on a crime scene?
I couldn't tell you that for sure.
Now, if we later on find, and did you notice bloody footprints? Well, first of all, did you notice bloody footprints inside the feed room?
I don't remember seeing any.
Sorry?
I don't remember seeing any bloody footprints.
Okay. If there were bloody footprints in the feed room, could they have been created by you or your men?
They could have been created by anyone walking in that area, sure.
And you're walking in there, or your men are walking in there, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And you think that's standard operating procedure?
Well, you do your best not to contaminate anything.
And this is your best?
What you're looking at right now is standard procedure.
To walk in an area where there's blood, where there's brain matter, where there's, and I believe there was wadding laying on the floor?
I don't recall.
But you would agree with me that you have these procedures so that you don't contaminate the crime scene, so that you don't destroy evidence like those tire tracks, or those footprints, or leave your DNA, or in some way alter the scene so that if, I mean, you would agree with me, so that, let me finish the question, so that if there is exculpatory or inculpatory evidence that would help you find the perpetrator and prosecute him, or evidence that would clear somebody, that was destroyed. Some of that was destroyed that night because you, your department, and maybe even SWED, didn't preserve that evidence. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure if I fully understand your question.
The question is this: if you are exfoliating, you're standing, your men are standing in the spot, and there was evidence there, or the tire tracks that weren't preserved, or the footprints that weren't preserved, that evidence could either incriminate somebody or exculpate somebody. Could, correct?
Could, yes.
That's why you don't do this, right?
That's why you don't contaminate the evidence, correct?
Just a couple more questions. You put yellow tape around the kennel, right?
We put it around the whole area.
Did you put it so that folks couldn't drive in and out?
They were not to go past where my vehicle was parked. I believe that was the extent of the yellow tape.
Yeah, but between your vehicle and the entrance, there was none of those tire tracks were preserved.
Entrance of,
The property. That if somebody had driven into the property
you mean from the main road of Moselle Road?
from the main road,
All the vehicles were coming in on that driveway.
right? So if somebody had come in and left, who had committed the murders, whatever tire tracks that were left were obliterated by your men. Is that right?
It's possible.
Were you there when the coroner arrived?
Given my extent of the time there, I would assume so, but I don't remember
But you don't remember
specifically.
seeing the coroner?
I may have. I don't remember specifically.
Apparently, according to the body cam, you didn't talk to him.
Not on my body camera, but it could have been after the body camera was turned off. I don't know.
And why'd you turn it off?
Why was the body camera turned off?
Yeah.
Once my specific job of doing any primary investigation after my initial arrival is completed and I'm not going to be doing anything further to investigate, it's no longer needed.
Thank you. Please answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. You were asked a series of questions about contaminating evidence. Are you aware that any evidence was contaminated in this case?
I'm not.
Did you engage in everything you could to avoid contaminating evidence?
Yes.
Did you in fact instruct your deputies, set up a crime scene and instruct them to avoid areas where evidence might be contaminated?
We did everything we possibly could to avoid contaminating evidence.
Do your officers all have basic training in trying to avoid contamination of evidence?
Yes.
Are you also, though, as first responders in a fluid situation, doing the best you can to assess what's going on?
Correct.
It's not your job to do the actual crime scene investigation work, is that correct?
Not at all.
You were asked about whether or not you'd had any meetings with prosecutors. Is it common for law enforcement witnesses or any witnesses to meet with the prosecutors prior to a trial?
Very common.
Okay. Did anybody ask you to do anything but express your accurate and honest opinions and observations about what you observed at this scene?
No.
You were asked about this particular shotgun right here, this 12-gauge shotgun. This is the shotgun that Alan Murdaugh had when you arrived at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were asked about the shells right here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you unload this weapon?
I did not.
Was it unloaded by somebody else after you turned it over to them?
Yes.
You were asked a little bit about the 300 blackout casings or cases that were at the scene. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And just real quick, explain to the jury what a casing or a case is, please.
So a casing would be what would be left after the projectile has been fired through a weapon.
After it had been fired, the shell that comes out of the gun and lands on the ground near the victim. Is that
That's
correct?
That's correct.
So it's the remnants of a fired round. Is that right?
That's correct.
There were multiple ones of those blackouts surrounding Maggie. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You were asked a lot about the tire tracks, and you just happened to notice those over behind the defendant's vehicle. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And we had a still image put into evidence, exhibit number 5. This is it right here, which is just a still image. Is that right?
Yes.
All right. And the still image doesn't reflect as good as what the video does. Is that right? You can see it
The
clearly.
video shows it much better.
Much better. All right. Were these like tracks in the dirt, or were these just impressions in the grass, in the dewy grass?
They appear to be impressions on the dewy grass.
Okay. All right. They weren't like tracks in the dirt that you saw, correct?
No.
All right. I'm going to go back to the video. I'm playing it at approximately 25 minutes and 11 seconds.
Maybe from earlier, but only 2 were mine.
Did you go out this way at all?
No.
Billy's right.
Bring back.
Just go over to that corner of the building.
Yeah, I'm almost to you. Let me see what we have first, and whether or not we can handle that part or not.
I see quite a few tire tracks in here. Were any of these you going in and out?
No, I came in here and I left one time and I came back.
Okay.
But the rest of them, maybe from earlier, but only 2 were mine.
Did you go out this way?
So the images that we just saw, those were the dewy impressions in the grass that you were just talking about. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And the defendant said 2 of them were mine, and the rest of them may have been from earlier. Is that correct?
Yes.
You were asked a little bit about the boat case. Did you have any detailed knowledge or understanding of the boat case when you arrived at the scene?
No.
You just knew very generally that there was some boat case. Is that right?
Yes, it had been in the news.
Did you even realize that this was that Paul Murdaugh when you arrived on the scene?
Not until he had brought up the boat incident.
And who brought up the boat incident?
Mr. Murdaugh did.
And within a few minutes of you arriving, he's the one that brought up the boat incident. Is that
He did.
correct? And he offered that right out of the gate as a possible explanation for what happened here. Is that right?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Your Honor. Did you find it unreasonable for him to say that his son, who'd been involved in this incident, who'd been threatened on numerous occasions, been punched, he told you he'd been punched, right?
He did.
Okay. That was a possible explanation, not implausible, for somebody killing Paul. You didn't bite back on him, did you?
No.
And it was, in his mind, apparently the only reasonable explanation that occurred, right?
I don't know what was in his
Well,
mind.
I mean, that's what he told you. That's what he believed.
That was the statement that he made, yes.
Okay. And just one other follow-up question. You were asked if there was any evidence, the Dewey tire tracks. This was at 10 o'clock at night. Was there dew on the ground already?
It was pretty humid out. There was a lot of
It was
dew.
humid.
Yeah.
It wasn't like in the morning.
This was not morning time.
So, and are you telling me no one could have looked, no expert could have looked and said, you know, that's a Suburban, that's a pickup truck, no one could do that? Or do
I'm
you-
not going to pretend to know what an expert in that kind of stuff can and can't do.
But you're not an expert. Did you believe those tire tracks would last until SLED got there?
Yes, it appeared that they probably would.
Did you point them out to SLED?
Did I do it?
Did you point them out to SLED?
I did not.
You may step down.